everybody, and welcome to Talking Fun Points, the podcast where we talk about the same albums that Fun Point talked about several years ago.
I guess this is only the third time this has happened.
Yeah.
And one of those times we weren't even the people recording, so...
This is actually Tuning Fork, a podcast about music and the Pitchfork Media Hype Machine. I'm David.
I'm Matt.
We have a guest today who is joining us to talk about an album that he loves a lot. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joey Walker. I am a musician, and yeah, I like this album a lot.
Hell yeah.
This is kind of an album that is really up there in the like Pitchfork importance scale to me.
Mm-hmm. It's also like I think one of our like musical taste hallmark albums. Like it's one of the ones that we knew that we'd be covering the second this podcast started. It's like this is Spider-Man of the Rings and like Silent Shout, which we will get to eventually.
Yeah, so this is East by Joanna Newsom. And Joey, I wanted to kind of start with you. Like, how did you first get into Joanna Newsom back in the day?
Great question. I was thinking about this for a while. So I think I found this album during my freshman year of high school. So that would have been 2007. So only a year after this album came out. I don't remember exactly who introduced me to it. But at the time, I was really into Neutral Milk Hotel. And
of course,
as one does as a
high school freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't remember how I found that album, but what I do remember is knowing that did it get a 10 on Pitchfork?
The later retrospective review of it did. At first it got like an 8.2.
Okay, well, either way, it was through Pitchfork that I found Neutral Milk Hotel and subsequently Joanna Newsom.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe I'd seen the name and didn't check it out, and then I had an online friend tell me to listen to it. But it was definitely like through Pitchfork, so very apt to be talking about it on your lovely podcast.
Through like this specific lens. It's like it's definitely an album that like I know people will kind of deride it as being pitchforky, but like it definitely deserves any and all hype it has been given. Yeah,
this was like for me, Joanna Newsom. I had, like you said, heard her name before, but not really ever checked her out. And then I was at my local library that I grew up a block away from one day, perusing through their CD section, and not this CD, but the follow-up EP, Joanna Newsom and the East Street Band, was there. And so I grabbed that one and I listened to it. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I understand why people are talking about her now. So she was kind of like one of the first like folk artists that I got into. Like not indie rock, not folk rock, but just folk in general. Yeah, and so after that I listened to East, and then I completely understood why everyone was so into her at the time.
I really feel like the term freak folk being applied to it is like a huge disservice in like a whole bunch of ways. I guess we can almost talk about like how much that label just kind of sucks in the first place for a lot of reasons.
Right. I mean,
we haven't really talked about the use of that term at all on this podcast yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't really talked about anything that would fit the banner.
Yeah.
That would fit the band heart.
Yeah. People lumped Animal Collective in with it a lot back in like the Sung Tongs and Feels Day.
I guess that kind of works in that era.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like even on Vashti Bunyan's follow-up, Look Aftering, Joanna plays harp on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Vashti worked with Animal Collective on Prospect Hummer.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it must have been around Have One on Me when she got interviewed by Nardwuar.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying something about like that movement, and she was like, yeah, to like lump me in with like any movement at all. Like, yeah, it's kind of like pointing out how silly it was.
Mm-hmm. That was an occasional, like, you don't get them very often, but that was definitely a Nardwuar L. sometimes he'll chase something in an interview and it just kind of feels really awkward. But it does kind of work in service of the interview format and the character that he's playing. But it kind of just it seemed like it seemed like a line of questioning that she wasn't particularly interested in, nor was she didn't really want to engage with it.
Well, I watched it the other day, and I interpreted it as him agreeing with her point of view, like even before she had a chance to answer.
Okay.
Because he kind of like preempted it was like, yeah, I'm sure you love being referred to as being a part of like that movement.
Oh my god. Okay, never mind. I was misremembering the interview.
Yeah. It's been a while since I dug into like Nardwar's backlog of all of his interviews. But I did watch a lot of them. As
good as long as you don't go into his 90s interviews. That's where his actual
there's some
helps
really
are.
good ones. There are the one with Henry Rollins is so funny.
Okay, no, the Henry Rollins one is very funny.
And then the Lydia Lunch one is like they are like almost like gonna get in a fight. Is crazy.
Lydia Lunch one kills me.
Was it Oasis that actually got into a fight with him?
Blur.
It was Blur. Okay.
Yeah.
But going back to, it's like the freak folk movement. I feel like it kind of culminated with that Family Jams documentary. I don't know if either of you have ever seen it.
I'm not aware of it, yeah.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen pretty much all of Joanna's parts in it because that's how much of a fan I am. Someone's made like a supercut, and I've watched that plenty of times. But it was like this tour in 2003 or 4. Maybe it was like both years on and off. But it was like Joanna, Bill Callahan, Devendra Banhart, among others, who just went on tour and were weird on tour. Like, not like weird, but, they're freaky.
I think it's basically just like people were trying to make a movement and a genre out of these people are friends with each other.
Right.
Yeah, like New Weird America.
Yeah.
It's kind of what they're going for.
Because, you're just associating a group of people who did a tour together and are friends.
It's kind of like they were trying to make them into, like, the next Elephant Six.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But, like, instead, you could just be like, oh, yeah, Joanna Newsom was on that Nervous Cop album, so Hella and Joanna Newsom are the same genre.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, actually, because the Nervous Cop album, which was one that she appeared on... featuring Greg Saunier, John Diederich, and Zach Hill. That came out before she had actually recorded any of her own stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I didn't realize.
The demos for this album were recorded by Dan Elkin.
Yeah.
Who is also hella adjacent.
Well, it's also interesting, like, her pre-solo material. From her admission, like, she never sang before Milk Eyed Mender, really.
Yeah.
And so it was all instrumental. So she was like an instrumental like composer. She like went to Mills College for music composition and felt very out of place because everyone there was making music on laptops and stuff.
Yeah. And this album got recorded on entirely analog equipment. I think it was, I think I read that it was 2 24-track tape recorders.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Well, that's what hiring Steve Albini will do.
Yeah. So yeah, Steve Albini was the one who recorded the vocals and harp parts for the album, and then all of the instrumentation orchestration was Van Dyke Parks, who signed on. Like Joanna was seeking him out after listening to Song Cycle. Have either of you guys listened to Song Cycle?
No, actually.
I think once I have. Yeah.
I've just had it on my like list for ages because it's like, oh, she was inspired by that to get his instrumentations for this album. I kind of want to hear that. Just like sorry.
Well, and he's also like the co-owner of Drag City.
Oh, is he?
Well, I like, at least at the time, I believe he was. Yeah.
Okay, that tracks.
And this album's mixed by Jim O'Rourke. So.
Yeah, really, just like just that is a ton of good talent just behind the boards without even considering Joanna herself, which obviously you should because she wrote the whole thing and plays on the whole thing. But
I heard an interview that Steve Albini did, and he was talking about like 3 musicians that like really had an impact on the way he recorded and like approached the craft of being an engineer, and Joanna was one of them, and I was kind of surprised. Because I think they've only worked together that one time, but
yeah,
I guess it was that impactful. And then I read, I think it was an interview with The Wire where Joanna was saying that, so they recorded the harp and vocals before any of the arrangements had been finalized whatsoever. And on top of that, she didn't record with a metronome whatsoever. I guess she doesn't believe in it.
God, that is insane. That is insane considering some of the...
sense.
It does make sense, yeah. With the way some of the phrasing
shifts.
goes.
Yeah, it kind of shifts around tempo-wise quite a bit, but not to like any sort of deleterious effect. It all works.
Yeah, no, I don't think it ever really becomes like distracting when she does it. It's just like it flows into the next section really nicely. Like I was I did my usual pre-podcast recording listen on a walk yesterday. And it never really killed my rhythm at all.
Yeah.
Like if I'm listening to like something with that's doing some really aggressive tempo changes, I basically have to just start running, or else it will I'll throw off my walk too much, because I really start walking in rhythm when I get into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, what was I going to say? Oh, so I never really noticed it until she said it in an interview that she didn't use a metronome. There's one part in Only Skin that I guess it's not a lot to bring up, but there's one part where I finally like really heard it, and I was like, oh, the tempo is a little weird there. But so Van Dyke Parks took the recordings and made arrangements from those working with her. But what I didn't know is that in order for him to conduct and record all of the orchestra, he had to like digitally map like a metronome like beat tick to the songs. So he had to like painstakingly go in and do that.
Yeah.
I really hate that this is immediately where my brain went, but that just reminds me how in Cats 2019 they recorded all the vocals live on set and recorded the orchestration around that. And
what an insane thing. What? How? Why? Why?
And I love Cats. This is just coming from me. I do love it. Tom Hooper should be in prison. Meanwhile, Van Dyke Parks clearly at least knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
because like basically what was happening on the set was like they were getting those vocal cuts, and he was just throwing them to the orchestrator and saying go.
Yeah,
although I guess
there's 32 people listed in this orchestra on the page for this album. So yeah, that's a whole lot of people to bring together on something that doesn't have a regular constant time signature.
Yeah, so clearly he went through, did the work beforehand, and had it all ready to go before he actually hired the orchestra to play, which is what like any reasonable person would do. But Tom Hooper is a criminal that belongs in music jail.
Won't you come with me to music jail?
I was hoping you'd get it. We love to make obtuse They Might Be Giants references on this show. So everyone forgets that I had a different They Might Be Giants podcast that I never update.
Yep. But that's going to be fixed pretty soon. Not by you, but by somebody else.
No, there will be a different They Might Be Giants podcast on Noise Space. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we're talking all just about like the kind of whole piece here. Who owns the vinyl?
Yeah. I used to.
I think we all own the vinyl.
We got it. We got the episode where we all own the vinyl. It finally happened.
No, I don't. I sold mine.
Oh, dang! Okay, well you owned the vinyl. It counts.
I did own it. I have a funny story about that, actually. So, during the pandemic, I didn't lose my job or anything, but I decided to sell all my vinyl as, like, to make more money. I don't know. They were just sitting there, and I never used them.
Yeah.
So, I listed East on Discogs for, I think, $30 because I wasn't trying to, like, price gouge anyone.
No.
Like, I was like, if people want to like buy my records, I'm just gonna like try to get what I paid for back. Is really what I was trying to do. So I listed it for $30, and within like a few hours, somebody messaged me and was like, "You're one of like the few people who have this listed on Discogs right now. You could probably sell it for more than $30." Like, who is like price fixing Joanna Newsom vinyl on Discogs?
There are people on Discogs and also on retro game stores that will literally get mad at you when you list something too low because it brings down the average sale price and brings down the amount that they can get for it. So that guy was actually, he was being polite. He was being more polite about it than they usually are, but he was literally just mad at you because you were a risk of bringing down the average sale price of the album for someone who holds it.
But then also the average sale price was like $40, so it's like $10. It's fine. Like
He's probably mad that people have been regularly selling it under like $50 because he's
You worked
an
for a
insane
company
person.
that was fixing vinyl prices.
God damn it, Pete Buttigieg again. You goddamn rat.
I want to see Pete Buttigieg's Discogs collection.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't.
But yeah, the it's one of those. It has the records stored in the outside part of the sleeve. Those are gatefolds, right? I never know names.
Yeah.
And then it has the booklet printed on the inside with all the lyrics, which is very nice to have. Which means when I'm referring to lyrics, I can actually be using the physical booklet instead of genius.com.
And you do need to refer to the lyrics in this album.
Oh my god,
because
so much.
all of the songs are just words the entire way through.
Well, yeah, they're very lyrically dense, and then there's also points where just the way that her inflection works on the words. I like there's one example like it's where she says clay-colored motherlessness, and I heard clay-colored motherlessness. You'll break the words in different spots because of the way she pauses, and it's very good to have the lyrics in front of you for things like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think normal people understand what hydrocephalic listlessness implies.
I also heard that as hydrosyphilitic.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I was thinking disease instead of brain.
Yeah. This album, the Pitchfork review we should talk about. It's a good review. Not just a good score, but it's well written in my opinion. It got a 9.4. So obviously very good. Got best new music. The person who wrote it, Chris Dolan, addresses kind of the common criticisms of Joanna Newsom at the time, which was A, she's overly wordy, and B, her voice sounds kind of unconventional.
Yeah.
And just kind of says, that's actually not something that detracts from anything, and maybe even enhances it.
Every point where her voice like kind of squeaks or goes off key a little bit on this album is there for a reason. It's all very, very, it's all emotion. I mean, the whole album is emotion. I've always talked about on this podcast how I'm kind of shit at hearing lyrics most of the time, remembering lyrics all of the time, and interpreting lyrics the vast majority of the time. So
yeah.
And for something like this even to really, really grab me, despite the fact that I know at best a couple of phrases on most of the album, it's just because it's such an effective mood piece. I had a really stupid anecdote about this. I would listen to it just while reading books sometimes because it would put me in a nice. I could just kind of tune out the lyrics, use them as instrument, and just read something. And I had been invited to join a Joanna Newsom fan blog on Tumblr. And I posted about reading a book while listening to it. And the other mods found that so offensive that they removed me from the blog.
That sounds like Joanna Newsom fans.
I was literally reading The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Very funny.
I can see why someone might take offense to that.
I get it, but it's still very funny.
Part of this, image of Joanna Newsom as sort of Baroque or Renaissance or even medieval, and why people, it's just interesting that people reject it so strongly because I think they don't want to be seen as nerds, but they are incredibly nerdy.
Oh yeah, no, this is fucking nerd music, 100%.
Well, it's also we can dip into the cover art for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
it's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. It definitely does not help anyone trying to fight the nerd image off. But so it was
Benjamin Vierling.
Yep, Benjamin Vierling. I think it's egg tempera, which is a medieval Renaissance paint style that uses egg yolk or white to paint. It's very very odd and archaic kind of way.
It's very glistening.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah, it's hard to describe how it looks.
Everything has a lot of really good texture to it, and everything kind of looks physically the way it should be, it's a picture. It's really gorgeous.
It's kind of like a one of those really intricately illustrated children's storybooks.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Like one for the parent to point all over the page and, show the kids maybe you didn't notice this detail of the picture.
Yeah.
Or like an I Spy painting.
Yeah.
Or I guess those are all pictures.
Yeah.
I love the crow with a little cherry in his mouth. He's always been my favorite part of the cover. He's just such a little guy.
Yeah. So she's holding a sickle and is holding like a framed moth. And then there's the crow and a flower crown and like braids in her hair. And then like this weird like belt cotton shirt with like overshirt thing. So it does have a very like medieval
old-timey
Renaissance
kind of vibe to it.
Which is funny because she was saying that this outfit that she was wearing for it is like an outfit that she actually owns, and she would just wear that casually. Funnier,
not helping
too,
her case at all.
Yeah, funnier too is that so it wasn't like a dress, because on this painting it looks like a dress, but apparently it's just like the top. And when she went to because she's friends with the painter, so she went to like sit for it, and I guess she was wearing jeans or like wanted jeans in it. She was just like casually wearing jeans, and he was like, "That would be too weird."
But why would it be weird? This is just my clothes.
It's also funny that she says that a lot of people she points out like that this painting isn't necessarily like old-timey, because if you notice in the background of the sky, that's supposed to be an airplane trail.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird like anachronistic but not really sort of painting where it's like, I guess in her mind the painting is supposed to like represent the present, but I think to the average person it definitely looks older than that.
Yeah, for sure.
But she's just so not a contemporary minded person.
Yeah.
That it came out the opposite of that.
Well,
yeah, that's not even like it's not even like a knock on her or anything. She's kind of weird. That's fine and perfectly normal. It is kind of weird how people will extrapolate the image like presented on this album cover and other album covers and other work of hers to like, have her as like some kind of fairy princess. Because, like she's literally just talking about her own experiences, like cloaked in like a layer or two of metaphor. That's like the whole thing. She weaved a story on top of her own life.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's a perfectly normal thing to do. But people are so fucking weird about it. Especially when she started dating Andy Samberg.
Yeah. And also she doesn't really use the internet, so maybe that's not helping her case either.
No.
Right.
I mean, no one should. No one should ever be online.
Right.
Yeah, and looking at her background, like she grew up with professional musician parents who didn't allow her to watch TV or listen to the radio. So that probably also contributes to some of that.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that changing you a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so should we like actually start?
I wanted to, before we start, I wanted to just read the Rolling Stone review in its entirety.
Good.
It's one paragraph. It was written by Christian Horde and posted October 12th, 2006. Newsom is a classically trained harpist and singer who made a very good 2004 record, but this EP is hard to stomach. 5 tracks, 4 of them more than 9 minutes, and 1 only skin 16 plus, with meandering strings and things accompaniment, and indulgent vocal quirks that make Bjork sound like Kelly Clarkson.
When I was trying to find the review so I could read along with you, I found that they literally have a different article on Rolling Stone that was like a live review, which was like it was really good. They have
guy who has only heard Bjork voice, getting a lot of Bjork vibes from this.
And it's like, maybe the truth lies somewhere in between Pitchfork's love letter and Rolling Stone's own heavy critique. Like, fuck off. You don't have to be a centrist about Joanna Newsom.
No.
I also wanted to note that on the Pitchfork top albums of 2006, it ended up at number 3. It was behind Return to Cookie Mountain by TV on the Radio and Silent Shout by The Knife. Which, I mean, I can see us covering both of those eventually. Those are both very good albums.
Oh, one thing that we maybe forgot to note is not important, but Joanna is the second cousin twice removed to current California Governor Gavin Newsom.
I did know this. Gavin Newsom, retire, bitch. Here, I'm just gonna do a little ASMR can opening for everyone. I'm drinking a impeachment cider. It's apples and peaches.
Nice. I'm out of fizzy alcohol right now entirely.
No, but you need it for podcasting.
I do. I'll have to get some for the next time.
But yeah, like this is gonna be a weird one, the way we normally break this down. I don't know how you're gonna do it, Dave. But as was stated in the Rolling Stone review, this is a 5-track album that is 55 minutes long.
They called it an EP, which means that they weren't really paying attention.
No, absolutely not. And when you listen to it on the vinyl, it's 1 track per side, except for side 2, which has 2 tracks.
All right, let's start with Emily.
The lines are fading in my kingdom, though I have never known a way to border on them. So the muddy mouths of baboons and sows and the grouse and the horse in the hand rope at the gate of the looming lake.
So the very first sound you hear is Joanna's voice, which is mixed very low at first, and you kind of don't have any idea what you're about to get into at first. Then the harp comes in basically right away.
Yeah, this one's so nice. This is such a beautiful song.
Yeah,
the first line is funny to me because I think it was like a fan Q&A like moment at one of her shows while she was like tuning her harp. Someone shouted like, "What's a chimchurri?" And she was like, "I just made that up."
I like how it's spelt out on the lyric sheet as if like you're sounding it out.
Yeah.
Like the chim-chew-re. Just so you know. Just so you know how to say it.
I just always thought of that one song from Mary Poppins at that point, that the chimney sweeps sing, the chim chimney chim chim chiree.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
I wouldn't be
might
surprised
be related
if that was
to that.
Like, yeah, just like a subconscious reference or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So obviously we can't go through and do a close reading of all of the lyrics on this album because that would take, like, that's like a college course right there. Just just the poetics of these.
I literally just have the booklet open on my lap right now, and just Emily's lyrics are a full page. And this is like, the size of a record. So
yeah, this is a 12-minute song, I believe.
Yeah.
12 minutes and 7 seconds.
I guess we can sort of, the overarching theme is that, she's admitted to it, that this song is about her sister, Emily, who is an astrophysicist. And I guess...
And also does backing vocals on this song.
Yep. And Joanna has said that they're kind of, maybe not like opposites, but they're kind of into like different things. Like her sister's an astrophysicist and I think lived in Argentina at the time of this coming out or something.
Yeah.
So
it said that she'd been like in Argentina and like New Zealand. I imagine you just kind of go anywhere where the big telescopes are, which is a couple of different places now.
Yeah. And then Joanna's like kind of the opposite. She's kind of like a homebody and also does not do math or science stuff.
Which that does come out in like the chorus of the song where she manages to fuck up the varying descriptions of a meteor, meteorite, and a meteoroid.
Yeah.
We're going to be all Neil deGrasse Tyson about this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate. There's been a lot of debate on if that was intentional or if she really did just like make a mistake. I mean, for my reading, it kind of does seem intentional.
Yeah, no. I feel like both reads work. It's like the fact that her sister told her this and that she were to translate it into verse. It's like more like the transference of that meaning and knowledge that's important than the actual knowledge itself. Yeah. Like, because that's like the central point of the song. Like, she drives it in right at the start, and then like after the events of the kind of story that they go through on the song comes out, then she says it up a key. Which, that part fucking kills me every time. I'm just, like, literally, like, full-body goosebumps when she comes back in with the meteorites.
Yeah, the big return is...
Oh my god. Fucking rules.
So I just want to read that I guess, chorus. It's not really a chorus.
Yeah.
But, that the meteorite is the source of the light, and the meteor's just what we see, and the meteoroid is a stone that's devoid of the fire that propelled it to thee. Side note, people always quote her using the word "the" throughout the album. This is the only time she uses that word. Just like the nerd in me. I mean, and then the second part of the chorus is like the same thing but different. But
yeah,
so
the same words but with different similes on it.
Yeah. So I mean, just for those listening, so this is incorrect. Don't take it as science because it's wrong. So the meteorite is actually the leftover rock on Earth if it doesn't get burned up in the atmosphere. The meteor is the perception of light, so that one is right. And the meteoroid is the object as it exists in space. So it's the exact same thing as an asteroid, but just meteoroid. So basically, she just mixes up she mixes up meteorites and meteoroid.
Yeah.
So basically,
which is perfectly understandable because if you're putting it to verse specifically to remember it, those two words have the same number of syllables and sound the same. So you could easily just mix them up in your recollection.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I guess, I don't know if that's the point, but it's a perfectly good reading of it. I noticed one thing when I was actually looking at the Genius comments, which, like, usually not worth doing. And there are some particularly bad ones for this album. Because Joanna Newsom fans can be really weird about it. But it was one interpretation of the part where Emily, I saw you last night by the river. I dreamed you were skipping little stones across the surface of the water, frowning at the angle where they were lost, slipped under forever. In a mud cloud, mica spangled like the sky had been breathing on a mirror. So it's like her sister's focusing on the angles and the physics of it, and she's focusing on just like the poetic nature of the stone falling under the water. And I thought that was like just that interpretation of it is such a good like interpretation of their dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
It's also interesting to kind of overarching themes of water and like drowning on this album.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. And I guess I don't know if you guys had read on this, but like Joanna did this really weird thing when she was like either like in her late teens or like early 20s.
I did know about this. Yes, I know what you're
going to say. She just like sat at a river for like 3 days to like have
eating
some sort
nothing
of like
but plain rice.
Yeah, like to have some sort of like experience. And rereading this, I thought it was the same event, but it might be different, 2 different events. But there's one where she's like at a river trying to have this experience, and then like these wolves start running at her.
Oh my god.
And she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna die." And apparently the land like she was like staying on like a friend's land, they had domesticated wolves, and so they just like ran up to her and like started licking her face.
Oh my god.
I don't know if that's the same event, but
this whole story is like the more I guess I could say maybe less cringe even
version of Grimes going down the river with chickens.
Exactly.
I knew exactly where you were going.
Yeah. Grimes. You give us so much content for the show.
So so like the theme of water is like a big part in this song, but then also throughout the album. And I read that Joanna had I guess maybe we should have started by explaining what is and what that word means. So it's essentially like some sort of like myth about some city off the coast of Brittany, that something about like a king and his daughter, and the daughter was sinful, and then the city flooded and is like underwater.
Yeah. It was consumed by the ocean.
What's interesting is that Joanna has said that she didn't know about this before writing this album, and the album was completely written before finding this word. And she was having dreams where she kept seeing the letters Y and S like floating, and she wanted to like have a 1-syllable title for the record that had both of these letters. And she was like, well, the word yes, that seems weird. The word say, which also seems weird.
What if we ended up in the universe where Joanna Newsom called this album Yass?
The yassification of Joanna Newsom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, considering that, I wrote a joke in my notes that considering how much she got into designer fashion, she was probably just dreaming about YSL and forgot the L. That's Yves Saint Laurent, if you don't know.
Anyway, before we post the episode, I am going to put the cover of this album through the yassification filter.
Yes.
And so David can post it on the Twitter.
I'm sure
someone's probably already done it, but I want to do it myself, and then it's going to get posted on our Twitter.
You'll end up with a perfectly smooth Joanna.
Yeah, but it's kind of crazy that she had no idea really of this sort of like myth or like story. And she was also reading, she said she was reading some sort of like novel where it was talking about Ys, and it literally contained the phrase, "It is that damnable bell," which is the lyric that appears in Sawdust and Diamonds. Mm-hmm. And she'd written this before ever reading this book too. So a lot of like eerie coincidences.
Yeah, it's kind of nutty. And I guess like the main text of this song is, I guess if we're digging into the personal experience behind it, it does just seem to be about a miscarriage, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I mean, I kind of it got like brought up all the time as like the interpretation for this song and other songs like Baby Birch on Have One on Me. Mm-hmm. And at first I was kind of, I didn't want to, not necessarily not want to believe it, but just kind of like, I felt like it was a small reading of it.
Well, I mean, it just almost just seems like weird to talk about it, right? Because it's like, yeah. I mean, like all the points of this on this album are like stories from her life on which she has, you know, put a couple of layers of obfuscation. Although she really does just, you know, she straight up just says midwife on this one. Yeah. And like, it's not like it's exactly hidden, but yeah, it does just seem like, cause it's using the trauma of it as like a focal point in the relationship with her sister. So it's like, it's not even like the point of the song necessarily. It's just the thing that happened that spurred the events of the song.
Yeah. And I mean, revisiting it and taking that interpretation into account, there are now like smaller lines that come to me and I'm like, oh, I see how this fits. Like, you came and lay a cold compress upon the mess I'm in, threw the windows wide and cried, Amen, Amen, Amen.
Yeah. And like how, the cold clay-colored motherlessness, which is an impossible line to say. So the fact that she does it without stumbling is astounding.
That's why you hear Steve Albini yelling "Holy shit" in the background.
God.
One take, baby.
On that, apparently to get into the mood, Joanna like lit a bunch of candles in the studio, and so it was like very dark, so that she could like concentrate on like the performance, because I think it was all one take, if not close to that.
That's fucking insane. Like, that's just literally insane. Because like knowing the way that Steve Albini generally does his recording sessions, like he was at most just moving some mics around, right? Like, right. He just like, you know, placed a couple of mics in the studio and just hit play. Like, well, that's crazy.
If that's the recording philosophy, then it's no wonder that she probably chose to work with them.
Oh yeah, well yeah, because that's like I think we've probably have we even discussed a Steve Albini album on this podcast yet? I feel like we haven't.
No, we've talked about him a lot, but I don't think we've talked about one of his albums. Yeah, we
have to cover Cloud Nothings at some point just so we could bring him up playing Facebook Scrabble another time. But yeah, like he just his philosophy is more, you know, he wants to record people as they wish to be recorded, right? So he's not very hands-on in direction, and that's why he will call himself an engineer more than he'll call himself a producer, even though he is filling like similar roles in the studio. But yeah, like it's I mean, he did a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Like especially like if you any parts of the album where you're hearing just her and the harp, everything is so clear. When I was listening to it on my walk yesterday, I was listening to the FLAC from the Drag City band camp, and like you just like the dynamics of it are incredible for what is like, you know, probably a couple of tracks of recording, but still like recording one thing at one time. Mm-hmm. Like it does very well for itself, and of course, like the vinyl sounds just clean as hell too. It's a very good pressing.
I'm sorry, your Canadian popped out so much when you said Drag City.
Yeah. Drag. It pops up a lot, and I never notice, of course. But yeah, I guess that's most of what I have to say about Emily specifically. But I mean, we're gonna keep talking about the recording over the course of it.
We ready to move on to Monkey and Bear?
Yeah.
And with this eyes, she allowed the burden of belly to drop like an apron full of boulders. If you could hold up a threadbare coat to the light where it's worn, translucent in places, you'd see spots where almost every night of the year there'd be Mondays suspending that baseness. Now a coat drags through the water, bagging with a life's worth of hunger, limitless minnows.
All right. So with Monkey and Bear, the way that I read it, and I think that most people read it, is first at face value. You know, it's a kind of adaptation and expansion of the story of Ursa Major. You know, the constellation. And the story follows this monkey and bear who have escaped from captivity, and then the monkey tricks the bear into, like, returning to servitude just for him instead.
Yeah, it seems like very much like kind of a textbook abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And another one where it's just like, man, getting into the specifics of it just seems like weird to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely feels the most allegorical, like shielding some sort of like deeper story. But it is pretty, like my interpretation is pretty face value as well, that it's like a story of conditional love, which is always really hard to bear. Pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like when the part where it's Ursula's heart beat faster than monkeys ever will always really kills me. That one really, especially when you consider that, like, as a smaller being, the monkey's heart would naturally beat faster than the bear's, so that's really saying something. Not to get into the science of it or anything.
Not to get Neil deGrasse Tyson in here as a guest.
Not to get any more Neil deGrasse Tyson on here.
Let me find the line.
BB-8 would not be able to roll on sand. I'm ball droid. I gotta roll on out of here.
God, fucking, darling, come on, will you dance, my darling? Keep your eyes fixed on the highest hill, where you will ever after eat your fill. Like, you know, just, pushing that theoretical future where you'll be free from this and we'll live together in happiness is like the classic, you know, it's a very just like leading it on by promising better things in the future. And that one really strikes me as like it feels dark. Like that's just like, it reads so true about certain kinds of relationships that kind of hurts to read.
Can you bear a little longer to wear that leash?
Ugh, just brutal. The fun little song about the monkey and the bear, and then she decides to fucking stab you.
Yeah.
I think this is my favorite Joanna Newsom song. Definitely
really
on this
good.
album, but maybe of all of them, yeah.
Van Dyke Parks really put his whole pussy into the flute arrangements on this one.
Yeah.
Like, just went all out. The woodwinds sound amazing on this one. It's like, he really, I guess he really like kind of earns his keep on this one. It's just like, I can see why the instrumentation is really necessary here. Especially when he starts getting into like the big drums later in the track, like kind of like the timpanis and cymbals and stuff that are going on through the closing parts of the song.
Yeah, I mean, the closing section is just so like, wow. It like the way that it feels like it's melting. It's like, but without like,
well, yeah, it feels like it's melting as they like describe the bear's body physically falling apart after drowning in the ocean.
But it's like, it's not like super literal or like cheesy at all. Like it sounds so like, I don't know, not like sinister, but like otherworldly, but like very, very dark.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's talking about the bear, like, you know, dying, becoming the constellation, like physically, you hold up a threadbare coat to the light, you could see a bear there. And, you know, it talks about the way that the bear's body parts slough off of her are like a form of relief, which is like, you know.
Oh, I mean,
just like
the line, she allowed the burden of belly to drop like an apron full of boulders is so good.
Fuck me. Yeah, no, that one always gets me. That's one, like, as I say, like I remember scant lines throughout things because like I'm a lyric idiot. But that one always, like, right there, I got it. That one's there. That one's lodged itself in the back of my brain for the rest of my life, probably. But you can really feel like it feels like a cartoon picnic where they put down the picnic bundle and like let it go and all the food kind of tumbles out of it and you can really feel the weight of it coming down.
Yeah.
And yeah, to think of that like as relief is like clearly something's going on there, Joanna.
Damn, Joanna.
I mean, that entire last section just like has the best words by a long shot.
Oh yeah, the last couple of stanzas.
In the magnetic embrace, balletic and glacial of bear's insatiable shadow. It's just like, Like,
now her coat drags. Now her coat drags through the water, bagging with a life's worth of hunger, limitless minnows. And that's where she starts putting on the background vocals, where she's singing like a high falsetto, and it sounds really, really spooky. I love that shit.
It's so crazy that like all of these images that she like creates through these words are like so decadent. But at the same time, even like metrically, they're just fun to say, and like they're almost like tongue twisters in a strange way,
which makes the limited number of takes even more impressive.
Yeah.
One of the songs, as a side note, one of the songs from The Milk-Eyed Mender was used in the horror movie The Strangers as part of the soundtrack. In 2008, which kind of like used the fact that her voice is kind of eerie and otherworldly to kind of help establish the atmosphere of that shot. Which, like, it's not a great movie, but I felt like it built up the atmosphere pretty well.
I could see that.
I saw it when I was in college.
I think I watched that and I just thought it was like way too ham-fisted, that moment specifically.
Yeah, I get it. The pairing of like halfway through the song, "Sooner or later you'll bare your teeth," with the final line of the song, "Sooner or later you'll bury your teeth." That's very much a only in the lyric booklet one for me, because I always just thought it was the same line repeated. I never caught the second syllable, and she kind of slurs it in there. It's very subtle, or at least I find it subtle every time I listen to it, because I try to listen for it and I only kind of hear it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of on purpose, especially because it is immediately following the line "when bear stepped clear of bear," and then the syllable "bear" is inside the word "berry."
Yeah.
She sure says funny. Bear a lot on this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how a lot of interviews that she was doing at the time, people were bringing up how many words there were, and she kept defending herself, saying like, "This is the minimal amount of words I had to use to get the point across."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really don't feel like there's any wasted lines on this whole album. Like, nothing feels like filler. Everything feels like it's driving a point or an emotion, like, really thoroughly. Like, at worst, you could accuse her of using too many, like, fucking SAT words. But, like, come on.
Yeah, she obviously is... She's obviously a person who is, like, really interested in doing more... Like more research than most people would think is necessary for her music.
But yeah, like, it's not like I don't think she was like sitting there with a thesaurus or anything. Yeah. Like she wasn't like trying to sound smart by using different words like balletic or insatiable or murthering.
Yeah. The archaic form of murdering.
But that's the next song.
Yeah, I don't really have that much more to say about Monkey and Bear. I mean, I think that it is pretty straightforward. It is just kind of amazing how like just like small details really paint the picture incredibly well. It's kind of like I don't know what the word would be, but it's like, I guess, goalpost moving. Like in a relationship where so it was like Monkey would throw, or like Bear would throw a stone, and that's where they would mark where they stop for tea, and then but they ended up moving way past that and just like this sort of manipulative relationship. Yeah,
like control to a point where it's like constantly promising the relinquishing of that control while, tightening the grip.
Well, it's also like an interesting like angle to the story as well, is that like a bear could absolutely destroy a monkey.
Yeah,
when you think about it. So it's like it's also like a weird like I don't know, like strength of the bear, but like not realizing it until like being removed from the situation.
Yeah.
You have to pick 2 to defend you, and the other 7 will attack you. Obviously, you're going with the 3 bears and 10,000 rats. What the fuck are you gonna do with that?
Speaking of bears, completely tangentially, there really was a lot of bear imagery in indie music in general in the late 2000s, huh?
Yeah, it was kind of all over the place, huh?
Yeah, like you had artists with the name Bear all over the place, like Bear in Heaven, Panda Bear, Grizzly Bear, Bare Hands, and yeah, I'm sure that this was not intentional on Joanna's part to contribute to that, but it's just an interesting thing to note.
All right, shall we move on to the next song?
Yeah. Next we got Sawdust and Diamonds.
Free burn sky high, and then a slow lip of fire moves across the prairie with precision. While somewhere with your pliers and glue you make your first incision, and in a moment of almost unbearable vision, doubled over with the hunger of lions, hold me close, cooed the dove, who was stuffed now with sawdust and diamonds.
Joanna Newsom goes to the Saved by the Bell reunion, and there she saw Dustin Diamond.
That was what I heard the first time that I listened to this, and I wasn't paying attention to the song titles. And that's the only time that the phrase "sawdust and diamonds" is used in the lyrics. And so I heard "Hold me close, cooed the dove, who was stuffed now. We saw Dustin Diamond."
I'm like, I will never not think about that, because that's one of the first things that I heard anyone say about this song was that you saw Dustin Diamond.
Yeah. This one has the really beautiful looping and building harp part throughout this song.
Yeah, polyrhythmic.
It is fucking nutty.
Yeah.
Just that by its... Well, this is also I feel like this one is mostly her and harp, right? I feel like...
It's entirely. Yeah. There's no accompaniment.
It's entirely. There's no overdubs on this one. Okay.
Yeah, So apparently, Joanna had written Sawdust and Diamonds and Cosmia before she had gotten into her head that there were going to have to be arrangements on the record. She didn't know what they were going to sound like or who was going to do it while she was writing, but she just kind of had it in the back of her head, there's going to be orchestra on these songs. So her and Van Dyke Parks tried to make an arrangement for this song. Apparently it just never really worked, so she scrapped it, but she felt okay with that because this was one of the songs she had completed before even considering there would be other orchestration. Yeah. I can't imagine this song with any other orchestration. I think it would be too crowded, and
you'd be covering up the insane harp arpeggio that plays throughout the whole thing. It's
that and the emotional vulnerability of it. Just It would be so wrong.
It's a really intimate song, which the Genius annotations strongly seem to suggest that it's about dealing with the grief of child loss and the kind of vulnerability of motherhood.
Yeah, I could definitely see that in the lyrics. It's
yeah.
I mean, it kind of comes back to me from a lyric that she would later write for Divers. That's "Tell me why is the pain of birth lighter born than the pain of death?" Mm-hmm. It honestly, this song kind of, in a way, seems to me to be that line, but an entire world within that stanza, even though it was written after the fact. But
yeah,
it's taking that stanza and making an entire almost 10-minute song on that theme.
There's the comparison to the relationships being a sandcastle being taken away by a wave.
Not just a wave, a gibbering wave.
A gibbering wave, yes.
What's the deal with the bell at the start? That's the part that I always I don't know where you're going with this, Joanna. It never really registers in my head. It's oh, that's just the start of Sawdust and Diamonds.
Yeah.
You mean that there's a bell in my ears? The line?
No, it's drop a bell down the stairs.
Oh.
Drop a bell in the water. Drop a bell off the dock.
Well, Genius seems to think it's a reference to Hemingway.
Okay, well, I'm not well read, so I would never get that.
Well, and it doesn't have very many upvotes, but I'm pretty sure that in the same Q&A that I brought up earlier, fan Q&A, while she was tuning, someone asked what her favorite author was, and I'm pretty sure she said Hemingway.
Yeah, that would all track. That's just the kind of shit that I'm not going to get because I'm a dum-dum, but...
Yeah.
Again...
It's okay.
Lyrics aren't as important to me as vibes. I am the dum-dum of the podcast for a reason. I am here for vibes and vibes alone.
This song just in general seems less immediately narrative than the first two tracks. Yeah. There's a story that's being told separately from what the what the track may have actually been describing in her real life. There's like an actual story and narrative being put on top of that, while this one is more just kind of imagery that flows into each other.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, like, half the stanzas end with her talking about her desire also. It's like, I really love the wording on on these lines. Push me back into a tree, bind my buttons with salt, fill my long ears with bees, praying, please, 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 love, you ought not. No, you ought not. I love the way she sings that one, too. I'm not even going to try to imitate it. You really can't. Like, I sometimes will like to do, like, little slight sing-alongs to be like, oh, this part, I like this part. And it's just like, I'm not even going to fucking try with this one. Not a chance.
I wasn't born of a whistle or milked from a thistle at twilight. No, I was all horns and thorns, sprung out fully formed, knock-kneed and upright.
What a stanza.
Yeah. So enough of this terror, we deserve to know light, and grow ever more lighter and lighter. You would have seen me through, but I could not undo that desire. I think the lyric sheet doesn't have the desires on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of unnecessary to write, I think, when it's emoted.
Genius likes to do the thing where it
it's an exact transcription, yeah.
Yeah, every repetition of everything.
I understand that from the perspective of Genius, and I understand not having it on a lyric sheet, which has a limited amount of physical space.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny we bring up Genius when there's an entire website just dedicated to Joanna Newsom's lyrics.
Is there?
JoannaNewsomLyrics.com, I believe.
Well, I am sure I'm typing that in right now.
Yeah, JoannaNewsomLyrics.com, all official. And then, so there's the official, and then there's the as heard. So they were already on top of it well before Genius, because this site is like really old.
I fucking love it.
God, Joanna Newsom fans are so nerdy. I mean, I'm one of them.
This has all of the hallmarks of like a 2006, 2007 website.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It looks like how Twitter used to look.
I mean, every website should look like this. This is how websites were meant to look. A column that fills roughly 2/3 of the space directly in the center, nothing on the sides, and a black text on a white background. It's perfect. Every website should look like this.
Times New Roman font, don't forget.
Times New Roman font, beautiful. Love it. Oh yeah, I really do love the official verses as sung.
Yeah.
I would really love that for Animal Collective lyrics, where they're clearly just not singing the things written in the lyric book. Like, you just, like, there's no fucking way you can interpret it as that.
Yeah, especially not on Strawberry Jam.
Strawberry Jam is the worst for it. God damn it. Pissed off all over again. Don't you lie to me and tell me that's what you're saying, Avi Tear. I'll fight you.
Oh, speaking of Animal Collective, so that new album came out. I haven't heard it yet. But someone quoted them saying something about Joanna, actually.
Really?
Saying something about how they wanted their music to sound like American, but not obviously American, or something like that. And they said Joanna's music sounds like folksy and like American, but like not in a very typical way, but one that you wouldn't ever mistake for being of any other nationality.
Right, yeah.
Something like that.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't see why you'd want to identify with America, but, you know.
It's American music without being country music.
Well, even more so, I would identify most of, if not all of Joanna's music as like specifically Californian.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, wasn't there a whole thing that was calling it like Appalachian folk music for a while? Like, that was the whole the way that they described her singing style was specifically Appalachian.
Well, she does take inspiration from some of those singers, so yeah. I guess I can see that. But also, it's kind of like the Midwest emo as a genre when people on the East Coast are writing Midwest emo, as so they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Well, yeah, regionalism's also just, they completely collapse in an age where the internet exists. Well, not completely, but like mostly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's less. I mean, I like regional scenes obviously still exist, although, not as much right now where concerts are bad because of, the whole lingering pandemic and everything. But in an era where people can communicate and, well, I mean, like, we're recording a podcast in 2 different countries and 3 different regionals otherwise. And over 2 time zones, like.
I think just 2 regions.
Yeah, me and you are in the same time zone at least.
Well, but then we're both in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so, eh?
I guess, I don't know. It depends. Well, yeah, this is a tangent, but people can define the Midwest very differently.
Yeah.
And I say there are actually two Midwests. One is if you're bordering a Great Lake, and the other is if you are a plains state.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But we would technically both be Great Lakes states, so.
Well, I'm in very much a Great Lakes province, so.
Right, that too, yeah.
And I live further north than you do.
Yeah, David is further north than me.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't have much more to say about Sawdust and Diamonds.
It's such a heavily like metaphorical song in the way that like the lyrics are written out. It's just like nothing we can say about it is gonna match the experience of just listening to them. I mean, that's true anyway, but you know, we're podcasters. We have to talk about shit that we shouldn't need to talk about.
Oh, I actually have something else to say about it.
Fuck yeah.
So it seems like of all the songs that Joanna performs regularly in concert, this is the one where she forgets the lyrics the most.
I'm just imagining being the guy in the audience with the lyric booklet open, just like yelling shit out.
I don't remember which festival, but there's video of it where she just like forgets like almost all of this, like not all of it, but you know, a lot of the song. She keeps like forgetting things.
Oh.
And she's just like, it's so endearing and funny because the audience is obviously like there for it. Like they're like, they're not like mad or anything.
No.
But it's just so funny. And then I think when I saw her at Pitchfork, she also messed up one of the lyrics to this song too. So it seems like the wordiness of this song, for some reason, she can't remember it as well as the other ones. I don't know.
It feels like there's a lot less, like there is an overarching story in the song, but there is less like connective tissue between the different stanzas.
Yeah.
So I can see how you can get lost in it. Like you could finish each individual stanza itself. But like, you know, knowing the next one isn't quite as easy as if it was like a straightforward narrative.
Yeah. So in this one video, it's really funny because she forgets like the end of like a verse, and then she just picks back up and goes like, and then the slow lip of fire moves across the prairie with precision, while somewhere with your pliers and glue you make your first incision, and in a moment of almost unbearable vision, she forgets the words and then she like screams.
David, I need you to find this clip. I need that clip in here.
I can find it.
Yeah, you should send that to me.
We absolutely need that clip in here.
There's that reminds me of an old recording of Colin Malloy from the Decemberists trying to sing "The King of Carrot Flowers" Part 1 by Neutral Milk Hotel, and getting to the second line of it and going, "Your mom with something shoulder."
Every time I see Born Ruffians, I try to get them to play a song from their first EP, which is like my favorite song of theirs. And the one time they did it, they forgot most of the words and also forgot the second verse. They're just like, we haven't played that song in so long, man. And I'm like, I get it. Thank you for trying.
Yeah. You always have to appreciate bands that make an effort to play something they don't know.
Yeah. Which is why, like, I'm always consistently amazed at They Might Be Giants' knowledge of their own catalog. That they can pull out some of the most insane deep cuts at, like, every concert. They are madmen.
I have seen John Linnell reading the lyrics off of an iPhone for Marty Beller Mask when that song was new.
Oh my god! All right, so we got to move on to the long one on this album.
Yes. Next one,
the long one in the album of long ones.
Yeah. Next one is Only Skin.
Stay with me for a while. That's an awfully real gun. And though life will lay it down, as the lightning has lately done, failing this, follow me, my sweet.
This one is almost 17 minutes.
Yeah, really making use of having its own side on the record at 33 and a third speed.
Yeah.
really filling that room. Whereas, like, you know, the D side is just Cosmia by itself, and like half the side is just blank.
Mm-hmm.
So Joanna has said that this song isn't exactly about an event itself, but if the 4 other tracks on the album are mirroring actual events of her life, that this one was an attempt to connect them all together.
Okay.
I could kind of see that with the way that that the song is laid out.
Yeah.
Just a lot of connections to the other songs that kind of show up within it.
It kind of follows a similar track, at least partially, with Monkey and Bear, with kind of the talk of the relationship that you are fighting through, even though it may not be the best thing for you.
Yeah. I mean, she literally gets Bill Callahan doing background vocals later in the song.
Yeah, within like the last 3 minutes of it.
Because I mean, like people are like weird about their relationship to each other. Is my main understanding of Joanna Newsom fans.
Yeah, yeah.
Which like probably doesn't need any elaboration, but like
anytime two like musicians that are fairly like open with their fans like get together, it's always people always end up being weird about it. Like
yeah.
Like with Nathan Williams and Bethany Cosentino back in the day.
Oh, yeah. People were real freaks about that one. But now Waves is a landlord, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, it's Go Longs on Have One on Me, but I don't know how anyone is like obsessed with like their relationship or like what it was after hearing that song, because it's like that is like the like sickest diss song like ever.
Yeah.
Joanna invokes imagery of Sisyphus to talk about like a lover's infidelity. And this before this recording was the first time I had listened to this album since playing Hades. And my friend Sisyphus would never cheat on me personally. He just gives me gyros and fries, and it's nice.
He's nice. I really like. When I was listening to the album yesterday, I literally had to pull up my phone while I was on my walk at like -18 outside, just to pull up my phone and say, I can't believe the line "some sassafras, oh Sisyphus" and "oh that's an awfully real gun" are in the same song.
Yeah, yeah. That line, "that's an awfully real gun," kind of brings all of the metaphors kind of into the background while something like really concrete is happening all of a sudden.
Yeah, they had, it's one of the few lyrics that are directly referenced in the Pitchfork review that it kind of just feels like a rend in the fabric, which I thought was a really good turn of phrase for how that lyric feels in the rest of the song and even in the rest of the album. Because like, you know, she's intentionally pulling like some really like almost like storybook imagery through a lot of the album. That's like kind of how she weaved the whole thing. And then to just be like, oh shit, that's an awfully real gun.
That's the cover art again. The cover art is the stylistic choice plus a bunch of modern items.
Yeah, I guess it's like, it's not necessarily an anachronism, but it feels like one.
Yeah.
With the kind of style that's around her.
A Fabergé gun.
Is your edition of Yeast the gun edition? Did it come with the gun? Did it come with the awfully real gun edition?
Drag City was out of those by the time I got into this album.
The line that jumps out at me more than that one that always kind of feels weird is, in my doorway we shucked and jived. I don't know what it is about shucking and jiving, but that one was always just like, that just seems like a weird sentence to use right there. Because that's extremely Black American culture.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, what's that doing there?
That classic rock song, Shuck, Jive, and Wail.
And then the Bill Callahan comes in on with the bones. All my bones, they are gone, gone, gone. Take my bones, don't need none. Cold, cold cupboard, Lord, nothing to chew on. Suck all day on a cherry stone. The Bill Callahan vocals, like I feel like they work with the tone of the song, but they are singing like it's not even it's listed as a vocal harmony, but it is not harmonized at all. And I don't know if that was intentional or if that is just kind of how Bill Callahan sounds.
I think isn't he just singing like 2 octaves down from her?
I don't know if it's just the timbre of his voice that makes it so different because it really feels dissonant. And I don't know if that was intentional, but I think it works.
For sure,
I think it works. I think it kind of works to the point of the song.
Yeah, the thematic nature of the song.
Yeah, I think to this day I still don't know what this song is.
Yeah.
I've heard it so many times, and like I could probably sing it all from memory, but I still like don't know what's happening throughout all of it.
I'll have to ask James, because he's both a huge Joanna Newsom fan and a huge Bill Callahan fan. So maybe he's thought about it a little bit more.
He has to read the tea leaves for us on this one.
Yeah.
Caroline wanted to be on an episode for East, but didn't join our server in time. So I'll say, hey Caroline, you want to just drop like a few quick minutes about Only Skin for us, and we'll just put it in the recording.
Yeah.
We'll get Caroline's Pepe Sylvia monologue about it.
And now that the 45 minutes of that has passed, do we have anything else about Only Skin?
I feel like it's another one that just almost has to stand for itself, which I know feels kind of lazy from like a music analysis podcast, but you know.
I do like the line about like the relationship being like walking past burning cities. While holding your lover's hand makes the sight, quote, hale and harmless.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have a story about this song, actually, now that I think about it.
Fuck yeah.
When I was in college, I think I went on a date with a guy who was like, I think he was at the music school here, and he wasn't familiar with Joanna Newsom. And the date wasn't like going that great. And like, I think we got like a meal and I just like wasn't feeling it. So, but like I go back to his place or whatever, I don't know why. And I make him sit through all of this song. Because I knew, I was like, it was a power move on my part. Because he was like, oh, sure, I'll listen to it. And I made him sit through this like almost 20-minute song. And then I walked home after. No explanation, no.
There's a certain vulnerability to say, hey, I need you to listen to what I consider one of my favorite songs. I'm going to be here next to you as this happens. And I'm going to see your physical reaction to it as it happens.
I'm a horrible person.
I feel like I can never make someone listen to a song when I'm physically present, because I am going to be reading every single reaction out of them as it goes on. I just remember one time, I was just it was in like an open office setting, and it was like a Friday, and everyone was kind of just like half working at that point. And I was like, okay, we're all going to put on our favorite song, like one after another. And I'm like, oh, put on Heartbeats by the Knife, because that's like, you know, pretty perennial top of the list for me. And it came on, and everyone just looked so awkward saying that they hated the song. It just looked like they all were hating it as it was happening. No one said anything.
Yeah.
But they felt it. I felt it in the room.
I can one up that. For some reason,
good.
I was taking a Latino studies class, and I don't know why we did this exercise, but like our professor, like he made us like write about like our favorite song. Like this had nothing to do with the class. I don't know why we did this, but he like made us like take 5 minutes and write about our favorite song. And then he called on me first to like ask what my favorite song was. And then he like pulled it up on YouTube and watched, and like we listened to it
the whole
as a class. A lot of these people are just like in that class to like fill like a requirement, like a gen ed requirement or like something. Can you guess what song was playing for like most of the length of it?
Was it Only Skin?
No. It was Oh Superman by Laurie Anderson.
Oh no. Oh no. Just like, it's a vulnerable enough experience when you are doing it by your own choice in front of one person. When it's someone else queuing it up in front of a crowd of people, I think that's legally recognized as torture by the Geneva Conventions.
I was so uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable. I would have literally dropped out of school. Like that is the psychic result that would have had on me. What's annoying is that when we started this exercise, I had to like think for a second which I wanted to like write about, and I was like, it's either going to be Oh Superman or at the time, Carissa by Sun Kill Moon, because that was like time that album came out.
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, Oh Superman's my favorite, and I was just like, I would have been happier if I chose the other one. because at least it would have been like, oh, like sad acoustic song, like okay, that's fair. But then it subject people to like honestly like what felt like the whole song, but it was probably only like 3 minutes of just ha 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 ha. Horrible. So bad.
Yeah, like Chris is what, like 7 minutes? It's like a 7-minute song, eh? Like it's still pretty long.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 something. Yeah,
6 something. Pretty good song. Shame about the everything about him.
Yeah, it is honestly a shame because that song is it is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's like the last album he put out before he succumbed to posting disease. So we're not here to talk about him. He's cringe.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the last song.
Last song is Cosmia.
And all those lonely nights down by the river brought me bread and water in. But though I tried so hard, my little darling, I couldn't keep the night from coming in. And all those lonely nights down by the river brought me bread and water, the kiss and the can. Now in the quiet hour, when I am sleeping, I cannot keep the night from coming.
Which is a genus of moths, and the moth imagery carries through this entire song.
Yep.
This is the one that comes up the most for me, just like on casual play because it's the shortest. Like I threw it on like a lot of playlists because where it felt like if I put any of the longer songs, it would like dominate the playlist a little too much. So it's probably the one I've listened to the most from the album, just by that nature.
And in a way, it's honestly like the heaviest song of the whole album because I don't know if you're familiar with the context of this song, but so in 2004, when Joanna was on that Freak Folk tour or whatever, or Family Jams, I don't know if that was the name of the tour or just the documentary, she got a call from her family that her like very close childhood friend had died in a car accident.
Oh, shit.
And she was stuck on this tour. I think they were on the East Coast at the time, so it's not like she could just like drive back home. No. She just like had to like power through it. And then I think for her friend's funeral, she did fly back and like miss a few dates of the tour. So this song is obviously in reference to her childhood friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that really kicks your ass, huh?
I mean, it's like from like, I guess a personal standpoint, I think this maybe it's going to be my favorite over time. Because I had a friend who died the same way. I don't remember. I can't think of what year it was at this point. But it's just like the pleading at the end, or not even like pleading, but just like the like open statement of like, I miss your precious heart. Yeah,
the grief of it, I think, is like really the and miss. I think again, this is Van Dyke Parks really getting the overdubs perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the string hits there are some of the best orchestration work on the whole album.
Yeah, this one is another one which has which almost you could say has a chorus because it has the repeated stanza of "and all those lonely nights down by the river, you brought me bread and water in."
Yeah, again, back to the
so hard, my little darling, I couldn't keep the night from coming in.
Yeah. I mean,
I can sing that one.
It could be like the little reference to like her like weird spiritual experience where she just like stayed by the river and then her friends brought her food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that could be.
God, the water themes are just everywhere, huh?
Yeah, they really are.
She even literally says drown on this one. Moths around me thought they'd drown me.
Mm-hmm. The instrumentation on this one, you mentioned the arrangements, and we didn't mention this on Emily, but there's jaw harp in this album.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
I feel like I never really noticed it.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to detect on headphones.
Yeah, on headphones, and also just like, I was listening to the FLAC with a really good dynamic range on it, because I'm becoming that guy now, since I have a portable audio player that plays FLAC now. So yeah. I'm full audiophile mode now.
It's one line that sticks out to me especially is right before like the closing refrain, the "will you call me when you get there," which, knowing that her friend like died in a car accident, that's like something you always say to someone when they go like drive somewhere, and then for her to say that in a bit more of like a cosmic sense to her friend is like, it just like the parallel is like very impacting.
Yeah, for sure. Joanna, you really gone and done it, huh?
I mean, she must have had a hell of a year to like write this record in the aftermath of it.
No shit, huh? Well, yeah, because like she'd said like the songs are, you know, like stories of her life placed to, you know, with like a layer of metaphor or whatever on top of them. But yeah, I didn't even mention it's like these are all stories basically that had happened within a year of each other, right? Like it was all basically since Milk-Eyed Mender had come out.
Yep.
Which is insane. That is a fuck of a year.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think I picked up on was she had either started writing this song or at least had the instrumental when she was on that tour. Because there's footage of her in a hotel room playing the like the syncopated part of the song. So it's kind of interesting to think of the songwriting process.
Yeah, well, it's like
this one probably came together really quickly in the aftermath of that because she already had some of the instrumental to it.
Yeah, she had the instrument ready to go and then she just needed words to put to it, right? As someone who knows very little about the songwriting process, as the one of 3 people on this podcast who does not record music, I can... it's something that doesn't really like fly together in my head as well, but it's like the idea of thinking of the music and the lyrics separately. I mean, it tracks. Well, sometimes a melody sticks where it's not necessarily connected to lyrics.
Yeah, and I was reading one of the interviews around this time, and someone asked how she wrote songs, and she kind of would say that she would usually do like instrumentals, but then also just like have bits of lyrics where they weren't the right words yet because she hadn't yet like tried like singing with the instrumental. Because sometimes, and I recognize this as a songwriter, that sometimes like certain vowel sounds or syllable sounds just won't go with certain musical phrases, and you kind of have to like keep playing it and like keep it around until you find the right match.
Yeah.
So it was probably more of that, like having the
rhythm
instrumental
of it, the way that she's getting her lines around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. And then of course, if there's like a huge like traumatic event that comes with it, then you know things can start flowing a little bit differently as well around something that she already has. Imagine
being such a good friend that when you pass, this is the song that you get.
Oh,
we should all strive to be that person.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Anyway, hell of a fucking album, huh?
Yeah. I meant to touch on this and I didn't get a chance to, but I sort of wrote down in my notes like Joanna Newsom as gay icon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a lot of that. I would imagine it had to have started with this album and probably not Milk-Eyed Mender, just because of the, I guess, like scope and also just how much more traction East got than Milk-Eyed Mender. I mean, part of that was because the music, I mean, undoubtedly is better and the songs are like deeper, but it's also just a bit more of an event.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's always the Owen palette cover of Peach Plum Pear that can work towards its angle.
Yeah, but I was like, it's almost a joke at this point that whenever people talk about Joanna Newsom, they always bring up like Kate Bush and Björk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's a cliche at this point. Like, they don't really have a lot in common, those 3 artists. Like, almost at all, I would say. But
yeah, I would say, like, Joanna Newsom and Björk don't really sound alike at all.
No, like, not whatsoever, like, Björk's thing is electronics.
At most, you can say the pitch of their voice. Just the pitch. Like, that's it.
They're both sopranos.
But I don't think they are.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it.
They're not true sopranos. I don't know.
See, that's a distinction I could never make.
Well, like a true soprano is like someone who could probably sing like the Mozart Queen of the Night aria.
Oh yeah,
really high. Like that's a soprano. I don't think Björk or Joanna could hit those notes. I mean, like not knocking their ability or anything, but
it's just a different range.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot more altos in popular music than I think people realize for some reason. But anyways,
can actually get really low.
Oh yeah. So like those 3 are always brought up like compared to each other, or like when comparing any other female artist, they're always like one of the 3 is always brought up for some reason, and it's like a really annoying cliche at this point. But when I think about those 3 artists and maybe we can kind of guess who they would be in the future. But those three are like gay icons for like the weird like underground, not necessarily indie, but like weird gay kids who are like out there. And like one for each decade. So it's like, and maybe this is a little retrospective for people of my age because we weren't alive in the 80s. But I mean, like Kate Bush, her decade was, I mean, it was the late 70s, but it was mostly the 80s. Björk was definitely like 90s, even though she's still making music to this day. And Joanna kind of was like the 2000s.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, who is the 2010s equivalent? Do we have one?
Well, and I was going to say, I don't, it's hard to say because we're still so fresh off of that decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to like look at like, who are the gays like really into and like stan complete, like almost like ridiculous amount of like standing happening for someone who like isn't even gay themselves, like whatever. I think that the tens has to be Mitski.
Yeah,
okay.
For better or worse. I mean like
yeah.
I can't think of anyone who has that much of like a reach who appeals to like the gay crowd who isn't like a member of.
Sure.
Have you listened to the new Mitski album yet? Because I haven't.
I tried.
No, weren't feeling it.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of hers in general, but she's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've listened to a little bit of Mitski here and there, but I haven't really taken the time to get that deep into her.
Yeah.
Well, it is just like out of like all the like kind of indie artists working like, I guess in the prestige music industry, she's like the one that kind of has like the most renown at this point.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, just like so many like people are like, oh, I'm going to listen to Mitski and be sad or whatever, even though it's like, I think you could get sadder than that.
Something that almost seems like performative about the listening, or at least about the way that people talk about it.
Or yeah, and the way people consume it as well.
Yeah.
Which maybe doesn't apply to the three I just mentioned. But like going back to like, there's a certain type of gay who is very into Kate Bush, Björk, and Joanna Newsom. Like it's a type of person. I'm definitely that type of person. I have very many friends who are that type of person. I noticed that this might not age very well, but the current Jeopardy winner, the one who like broke the previous person's like really long streak. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you follow Jeopardy, but
yeah.
It was like is a gay librarian from Chicago, and he tweeted out like Joanna Newsom lyrics because he's a Joanna gay, and I was just like, as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's a Joanna gay.
I really wish that he had lasted more than one game because he seemed delightful.
Yeah.
But it's just like a type of person, and it's hard to say because a lot of these people, and myself included, like, are consumers of pop music, and I would put Kate Bush and Björk in pop music.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Joanna's a little less so, maybe a lot less so.
I feel like
she's had her pop moments, but yeah.
There are like, you know, I mean, that comes into a conversation of how the fuck do you define pop, right?
Yeah.
Right, and I think that kind of also goes back to the way that critics like those at Rolling Stone and elsewhere, like, they did not know what to do with this album.
No.
Even the people that heralded it as like a great piece of work and would be decade defining, like often they didn't even know how to talk about it.
I mean, I could say that, like, us doing this podcast, even though we have been talking for like 97 minutes about it, I feel like we didn't even do that great of a job talking about it.
Well, I mean, I guess we focused a little bit more on like the lyrics, but like, I guess the music also seems like out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very classical, just in general.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a little more Baroque than classical, but it's like orchestrated nonetheless.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I'm still confused on sometimes. When people say classical, I try to stick with like the classical time period for music rather than classical as the genre, placeholder for orchestrated or something like that.
Well, yeah, because this was also like, this was a big time for like orchestrators in like indie popular music. Yeah. Like this was the Nico Muhly heyday.
Well,
Motherfucker was on every other album.
Sufjan's Illinois was the year before this.
Yep.
it in like Grizzly Bear and like other bands that were like doing a lot more like orchestration, I suppose.
Well, yeah,
Arcade
that was
Fire,
one of the albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Arcade Fire had Owen Pallett doing his string arrangements. Owen Pallett was also on every other album.
Yeah.
He was on so many albums those couple of years.
I was surprised Owen Pallett wasn't even involved with this one because it just seems like the kind of thing.
Well, it's literally just because, he was mostly on Canadian albums in like 2006.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't until a little later where he started branching into like more like session work for people.
I'm just programmed to point at an album and say, "Hey, is Owen Pallett on this one?"
I had that thought while I was looking over the violin list. I'm like, I would know if he was.
Yeah.
Like, this would be something I would already be aware of, but I was still like priming myself to see his name on there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like him, like Nico Muhly was on a lot of albums at the time. Like he was on The Catamus, I think. I feel like he did orchestrations for that one. God, there's a couple other names that I've long since forgotten, but yeah, it was a very orchestral time for the indie rock in heavy air quotes community. Well,
I mean, even outside of that, you had people in rap sampling a lot of like a bit more classical things. Like, I mean, Late Registration, Kanye working with John Bryan, and like,
oh yeah,
God. Yeah.
I mean, it just must have been in the air at the time that having like analog sounding instruments and like actual orchestration was what was in. What's surprising is like the critical response to this record being like quite maligned in some places.
Yeah. God, and now I just remembered that I do have on my hard drive a hip hop album that is built out of Joanna Newsom samples called The Murthering Steak.
And I mean, the Roots sampled her.
The Roots also did sample her, yeah. And it's like I just like suddenly remembered that, and I have not listened to it in years, and I do not know if it holds up. I don't even know who did it. I need to look this up. The Murthering Steak. No, not the Mothering Steak. Eat shit, Google.
I wonder how much of the critical malignancy was like seeing the fan base being like so into this while not really being into anything like it at the time.
Yeah.
And not knowing what to make of that and just kind of writing it off as a fad.
All right. The Murthering Steak by Calamus Root Magician is a 20-minute Joanna hip-hop tribute remix EP. Don't be put off by the absurdity of the description. Unlike the many Joanna covers and remixes we've heard this year, this is perhaps one of the only truly inspired outputs worthy of your time. So The Murthering Steak. So we chopped up the work of Joanna Newsom and the E Street Band from vinyl LPs. And, it's mostly using the E Street Band. And since the Roots tapped that vein, so this was right after the Roots had Joanna Newsom sample on the song. So this was in 2010, so I probably downloaded it right after it happened. And I literally see me and Dave's friend Kit in the likes of the post.
That's funny.
So yeah, no, this is definitely something that I listened to when it came out and then never touched again. But I knew that the reason that the line "the Murthering Steak" always sticks out for me is because it was the name of that EP.
Mm.
Yeah,
it is kind of fascinating how much of a like force Joanna's music has been like throughout like this and the decades after in music, even though she's not like that publicly like available. She's very like private and closed off. I mean, she's been on a few like talk shows at this point, which I still find very odd that they invited her in the first place. I mean, it's obviously because she knows these people, but it's like so silly.
She was on the finale of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Well, yeah, I guess
right.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. I saw
Given
her.
That her husband is Andy Samberg.
Yeah.
Joanna!
But she was also
she has one line, and I was like, I love to see her.
Yeah, I remember watching one talk show where she tried to go through Andy's agent to get like she just wanted to be like an orc in The Hobbit.
My favorite Joanna Newsom Andy Samberg related story is just how like when they initially met, the first words she said to him were "You're Steve the cunt."
Yeah.
Which Andy Samberg describes this moment as seeing cartoon hearts fluttering over her head, which I would be too if she said that to me.
Yeah.
That's just such an amazing meet cute, because like that's so specific, like old Lonely Island. It's not SNL Lonely Island, that's YouTube Lonely Island.
Right, yeah.
Which like that's such a good pull to grab right away.
Well, with her influence down the decades since this album in mind, I am still listening through Have One on Me. I haven't finished yet, so...
I haven't finished listening to Have One on Me. I'm still listening to it to this day.
God
it's been 12 years. When will she let us free?
I knew this shit was going to come up.
I stopped briefly to listen to Divers, but then I had to get back to it.
Yeah.
Well, Divers you can't ever finish because it never finishes. Well, I mean, like, it's a literal loop. It'll never be over.
It's true. Yeah.
I could talk about Divers too. Obviously, it's not as important as like East was for her career. I think Divers is my favorite Joanna album.
I haven't spent nearly as much time with it as I have with East and with Have One on Me. Although Have One on Me is a lot of me listening to like the same few songs over and over again. Because just that's how my music brain works. I'll get really fixated on certain ones.
But that one had like singles released ahead of time for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yes.
Good Intentions Paving Company does work as a single.
Well, there was a music video made for it that was never released.
Come on.
Where is it, Drag City? Release the video.
Release the video.
No, well, I think it was said that she'd made that video with like I don't remember who the director was, but it was like it was a favor to them to like make a reel. So it was like the song was already cut to like a single edit, and then they shot footage for it, and then either she didn't like it or it was just a favor for their reel, and it was never like going to be a video to begin with. But there are photos from it, so it's like just release the thing.
I think you should just release it.
Release
the
like
Newsom
going back.
Cut. It's kind of like going back to like her weird amount of like presence and influence. Like people are still asking about that video to this day, and that was like 2010, and it's 12 years later. People are still asking like, just release the video. We would be happy if you just release the video. Blah blah blah.
I would just like to see the video. Thank you very much.
And I mean, maybe there's an element of she's not on the internet or like available to the fans, so the fans kind of are like engaged more with the actual music and her like life story, I guess, than if she were to come out and say it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I also like I understand that artists are sometimes like not wanting to put out something that feels unfinished or incomplete or not like a good statement of their artistic value. And I also understand the fan impulse of I just want to see everything.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just a battle between those two impulses.
Which is effectively what Phil Elverum just did with the Microphones box sets and releasing like 70 gigabytes of material with that, a lot of which had never seen the light of day before and is purposely called out as bad stuff that you shouldn't listen to in the liner notes.
I kind of got to respect his like chutzpah on that one.
Yeah.
He really, really put his whole self out there. Or like back in the Deer Hunter blog days where Bradford would just put out this giant fucking zip at the end of the year of all the random shit he'd posted on his blog.
Yeah.
Those were always great. I loved having those around because there was always just so many tossed off demos and weird covers and stuff that just like had no commercial value whatsoever. I miss the days where, like, music was commodified, but no one had figured out MP3s or streaming yet, so musicians could get really weird with it.
I just missed the 2010s. It was a good time. Or I just missed the 2000s in general.
The 2000s were great.
I mean, it wasn't all great, but...
It wasn't all great.
Yeah. It was.
Let us not patter to like rote nostalgia, but at the same time, it was before the internet had been largely commercialized, and it was just generally a better place to exist and also to create art.
I mean, I think we can unequivocally say that like the 2000s and even early 2010s, the internet was just better.
It was just absolutely 100% better. Unquestionably better.
The number of websites directly correlates to the quality of the experience.
Yeah, there was more websites and thus it was better. Now there's like 3 websites and they all fucking suck ass.
Well, you're forgetting the other option, JoannaNewsomLyrics.com.
JoannaNewsomLyrics.com is the only website. The description to this episode, instead of us writing anything, will just be a link to JoannaNewsomLyrics.com.
It should be.
David, don't actually do this.
No, you
but
better.
please actually, it needs to at least be in the description.
Yes.
Well, I mean, anyone's going to need to follow along. They need to know where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't trust their
right
ears.
right at the start of the episodes. Before we recorded this, we did not initially know of the existence of JoannaNewsomLyrics.com. So if you're listening to this on your phone and not in a car, I just need you to quickly go to your browser, open JoannaNewsomLyrics.com, and just have that ready to go for your listen. Thank you very much, and enjoy the podcast. It's my custom disclaimer for the start of the episode.
I do always appreciate finding like websites that are still around that like artists who have been online for a really long time are still maintaining. That's
how I feel about old Pokemon fan sites. Like Cerebi.net it's so specifically Web 1.0 still to this day that people complain about it literally every day of how bad his website navigates, but I respect his decision to do nothing but static pages covered in links. I respect it so much.
Exactly.
Anyways,
like,
in closing,
the one I specifically had in mind was the website for the musician Wobbly, who is one of the members of Negativland, who has been online and doing like webcasts since the late 90s and has just archived them all there.
Absolute king shit.
Yeah.
In closing.
So that's East.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to realize the impact that it has had on my life. I mean, in school, I was always like, even before this album, I was the weird gay kid. And after discovering it, I just cemented my status. I claimed that for myself.
It just locks you in.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly does. Like, after listening to this record, I'm like, wow, I want a harp. And I never have gotten one, but I have friends who got harps because of this album.
I mean, I feel me and David have a friend who does professional harp playing and is also a giant Joanna Newsom fan, so that tracks.
This is true, yeah.
You gotta start
listening
somewhere.
to this album. You either like own a harp physically or you own a harp in your heart. Either way, it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah, exactly.
And is a burden to carry around.
Yes. So that's Tuning Fork. That's a podcast. Thank you all for joining us. My name is David. You could find me on Twitter, unfortunately, still at Daves with 3 V's. I use that both as my personal and to talk about my music as Spinning Voices, which is used to be entirely chiptunes, now is just kind of generally electronic. I do also all sorts of different stuff under that name at this point. And I'm almost done with my next album, so sometime in the next couple of months, you'll probably be able to see that. Yeah, and you can follow Tuning Fork at Tuning Forkcast on Twitter. Joey, do you have anything you wanted to plug before we wrap up?
Good luck finding me, because I'm off of the internet now. No,
good for you.
Well, I deleted Twitter and Instagram because they're
good.
pointless.
I deleted my Twitter for a grand total of 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't commit.
But you can
It's kind of nice, though.
You can find my music if you search Joey Walker. I'm on Bandcamp as well as all streaming services. I don't have social media anymore, so good luck.
Yeah. Joey has a new EP out, which I'm really a fan of.
My biggest regret. I'm just kidding.
No, it's really good.
All right, I'm Matt. You can find me on Twitter at MattGCN. I have other podcasts, but they're not important because I never update them. I might update the Pokemon podcast at some point because I am actually really enjoying the new game. I also run a podcast network which this podcast happens to be on, called Noisespace. That's at noisespace.xyz or XYZ if you're a coward. And you can listen to a whole bunch of shows on there, including my mostly abandoned show about They Might Be Giants, and then also a show that's currently about Radiohead, but will soon be about They Might Be Giants as well.
Nice. Well, thank you to Nikki Flowers for making the album art for this podcast. And thank you to Animal Style for the use of our theme song, Open Air, from the album Open Air. And as we always say, every episode, I had never seen a shooting star before.
I had never seen a shooting star before. Joey, you can get one in too.
I'm good.